The Blade Runner maxi-series comes to a close when Ash confronts Niander Wallace to save the Selwyns and put a stop to the hunt with a risky offer. We're going to talk about it in our review of Blade Runner 2039, number 12, right here. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Blade Runner 2039, number 12 from Titan Comics. Before we dig into the issue, let's talk about the credits. This issue is written by Mike Johnson, with art by Andres Guinaldo, colors by Marco Lesko, letters by Jim Campbell, cover art by Veronica Fish for the main cover, cover A. Before we get digging into this issue, let's talk about what happened in issue number 11. Rash, who is the replicant of Ash, is now seemingly on everybody's side, or at least on Ash's side, and they've captured Love, who is the first replicant Blade Runner. And they found information from Cal Moreau, who is the first human Blade Runner, about how to make contact with Niander Wallace through back channels. They found an old woman who acts as, who's Niander Wallace's basically wet nurse or nanny when he's a little boy, but also supplies him with fresh organic material, which means body parts. A fight ensues, but she manages to get the point across and arranges the rendezvous meeting with Niander Wallace in a secluded spot. They meet at the spot with Ash holding Love at gunpoint because he's his latest toy, essentially. But Niander Wallace turns the tables at a cliffhanger by saying, if you give me the Selwyns, who have the secret to fertility for replicants, I will cure you of your debilitating disease that's killing you. Now we pick up in issue number 12, which is the finale for the maxi-series. Niander still reiterates this offer. If you give me the Selwyns, who have the secret of replicant fertility, I will not only let you go, but I'll also cure you of your disease that's crippling you and will kill you inside of a year. Ash is not hearing any of it. She doesn't want to believe it. And she keeps him at gunpoint, basically saying, I'm going to kill you if you don't agree to let the Selwyns go off-world and escape. However, Niander didn't come unprepared. He clicks his little beeper and a bunch of replicants show up and they attack Ash. She holds them off with the gun, but Niander Wallace goes off and heads to his spinner, and he gets inside, but he finds that the driver is dead and Ash is sitting at the wheel. So bait and switch. It turns out that Ash that was inside holding the gun on Niander was really Rash in disguise, and the real Ash, it was sitting in the spinner the whole time waiting for Niander because she knew he would try and weasel out and escape. Niander demands to be let out of the spinner. Ash says, nope, I'm going to take you home. And they fly off and they land at basically the rubble of Eldon Tyrell's old house or old apartment, if you will. And he says, why? And she asks him, why haven't you repaired this or leveled it or done something with it? And he says, I keep it as a monument. It's a monument to hubris, man's hubris. And she said, well, that's fitting because that's why you're here as well. And so she presents him with a new deal. And the new deal is leave the Selwyns alone or I'm going to kill you, which is essentially the old deal. And they talk a little bit. There's a little bit back and forth chatter. There's a little bit of mental maneuvering and manipulation, but Niander is not having any of it. And that's when Ash makes a desperate gamble, which may or may not pay off. Ash now knows that Rash was able to break her obedience programming to Niander Wallace. So the lesson there is that no matter how good the obedience protocols are, they can be broken, and eventually the replicants will overcome it. So Ash gambles away the future by saying, leave the Selwyns alone. Here is all the data on replicant fertility. And she hands him the disc. And he said, well, okay, you've given me exactly what I wanted for. Why are you doing this? She says, go ahead and make replicants. Go ahead and give them fertility. Let them make more replicants. Make a whole civilization, a whole nation, a whole planet's worth of replicants. Because no matter how good your obedience protocols are, they're eventually going to break them. And so all you're doing is you're creating the end of humanity. And if you believe you can do it, go for it. But leave the Selwyns alone. The replicants will find their own way, whether you like it or not. And then she takes off. Ash catches up with her friends a little bit later, particularly the Selwyns, and they say a very sort of quiet, low-key goodbye. But they also see that they're going to go off-world. Cleo and Isabel are going to go off-world, and Rash is going to go with them. Ash isn't too sure about it, but Isabel's pretty okay with it, and Cleo is very okay with it. She's like, trust me, Rash is a convert, if you will. She's definitely on our side, and she's going to look out for us so that if Niander changes his mind, decides to go after us anyway, because he can't make the fertility code work, she's going to protect us. So even though Ash is reluctant about it, she's definitely going to let them make their own decisions, make their own choices, and live their life as they see fit. And they part ways in a pretty sweet moment. And that brings us to the last scene of not only the maxi-series, but the last scene of Ash's career, because if what Niander says is true, she'll be dead in less than a year. And that last scene is just her spending time with Frieza, talking about what Ash has done. Frieza's very, of course, upset that she would give the fertility code information to Niander, and Ash reiterates the same conclusion that she already had when she was talking to Niander, which is he'll do it, but he won't perfect his obedience protocol, and he'll create a whole race and a whole army of replicants that'll eventually break his control, and that will be the end of him. So we have to trust the future, whether we believe in it or not. And the two of them together, just watching the beautiful skyline of the future of 2039, brings the series to the close and the end of Ash's career and possibly her life. So what do we think about this finale? What do we think about the end of the 2039 saga? It was a softer ending than we were expecting, or just had hoped for, or just assumed what was going to happen. But it was a clever, open-ended, more grounded, more realistic way to end this situation. There was no way Ash was going to be able to outrun Niander Wallace. Eventually, he would have caught up. He has all the resources. He has all the money. He has all the access. So either killing him may or may not have solved the situation, but definitely running from him was not going to solve the situation. So she's taking a gamble on the future, a gamble that she will never see. Some may see that as a selfish way to approach the solution to the problem, or not. But that's kind of the beauty of the ending, even though it is a soft ending and not a particularly big, explosive, climactic ending. It is a thoughtful ending, and it's one that kind of gets you to think about the choices we make and how we have to sometimes make choices that are not perfect and how we have to live with them. So I would say it's a very mature ending. It's a very grounded ending, and it's a thoughtful one. It gives you something to think about if you were in that situation, what would you do? So there's a lot of positives there in that it doesn't go for the obvious big bang sci-fi shoot 'em up epic, but it gives you something more meaty and substantial to think about. What didn't we like about this issue? Not necessarily anything that was structurally wrong or flawed, but we're hoping to see a little bit more, particularly with Love, who is the first replicant Blade Runner, at least in this series anyway, and her ending just sort of stops. You don't know what happens to her. You don't know what is the reaction or the result of her capture and eventually turn over to Niander. Does she go on and keeps acting as a Blade Runner? Does she have you get the sense that she was feeling deep emotional investment in trying to capture Ash and to put a stop to what they were doing and to capture the information, possibly because, as what was hinted at in prior issue, that Love may have fallen in love with Niander Wallace. So in other words, there are some threads and some interesting ideas and concepts that were coming from the creation of Love that didn't really pay off at the very end, and we were sort of hoping there was a little bit more to it. But overall, this was a very solid issue and a good way to end the series. Let's switch gears and talk about the art from Andres Guardado and colors by Marco Lesco. Looks fantastic. It has a dystopian Euro future feel, something along the lines of 2000 AD and a little bit of Mobius and some other things going on there. The pencils and inks are very detailed, but in a stylistic way, and the overall Blade Runner aesthetic is captured very well here. So I almost can't imagine a different artist doing a Blade Runner comic than the art team that they've got assembled here. So overall, really nice job from the art team. Final thoughts. What do we think about the finale for Blade Runner 2039? The solution to the problem of Niander Wallace's hunting the Selwyns is a thoughtful one. It's a risky one. It's an open-ended one, and it kind of gives you a lot to think about and just to consider as far as what would you do in that situation. It doesn't go for the big epic sci-fi shoot 'em up explosive type of endings, but it's almost a powerful one in and of itself because of how tension filled it is, in that it takes a lot of risk and assumes things will happen in the future that can't be foreseen. So overall, I think it's a strong and potentially even a powerful ending, even though it's not as hard hitting or big or uh, eye catching and explosive as maybe you might anticipate from a series of this sort. Therefore, we're going to give Blade Runner 2039, number 12 from Titan Comics, an 8.8 out of 10. I think it's a strong score, a deserved score, largely reflective of the art and the thought-provoking nature of the way the series ended and the way Ash's career ended. Would have maybe wanted a little bit more of the hard-hitting moments or something a little bit more dramatic or impactful in a physical and more tangible way. But overall, was a really thoughtful and mature way to end the series with hope or maybe dread for the future. So what do you think about the Blade Runner series from Titan Comics? Are you enjoying it? Do you think it fits well within the greater Blade Runner universe? Or is it a little bit too off the track one way or the other? Let us know your thoughts. And if you like reviews just like this one, please, first of all, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications so you can be notified when we put out the next review. But we have more published, so stay tuned through the outro for the next one.